Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to have an explanation about my code, JavaScript code and the result of code is a game which firstly I want to show you the game. And as you can see, the status of the game is paused, and by pushing space or clicking, the game is run. And the goal of game is to receive the honey, which is controllable by keyboard arrows to the bee. And as you can see, the level is 1, and if I send the honey to the bee, which this result will happen. And in this situation, if I press enter, the game goes to next level, which is level 2. Okay, now the level is 2, and the number of enemies will grow up to 5, and by each level the number of enemies, which in this game is these insects, grow up to 5, and so on. And if I lose, which the number of lives is got to 0, I will lose. And I want to show you, yes, I'm game over. And by pressing N, the game will renew and start again. And now I will push the button, and as you can see, the level is 1, and the game is started. And I have a special animation to the game, which activate by double click. Now I double click, and it's for fun. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to explain the code that the game which is built in this code. The first of all, the HTML code is a simple code, and I want to mention this line. It's only for inserting a jQuery library to my code. And I inserted a canvas element, and I inserted the JavaScript, which is its source is code 3_6. Now I want to explain the JavaScript code. I have the main function, which its name is new game, and in this part I inserted some elements. As you can see, there are some images, the hero character, the enemy character, and so on. And I inserted 2 IDs. And in the first line, I recalled the canvas by another API code, which is query selector, and I recall the canvas element by this line, and I recall the context by this line to simplify writing the code. And in this block I initialize parameters which defined by some variable, some constant, and I defined the canvas width by window inner width to have a flexible window for game. which is related to the which it's for relate the canvas dimensions to the window dimensions. And I explained, I defined API, the code, the standard code, as you can see, and tolerance, speed, and so on. In this blog, I use this order, this code to affect keyboard's stroke or mouse click to the game. As you can see, if the user push the space key, which is defined before, the game will pause. And I added a jQuery code in this way to have a pause situation by click. And the game function is the next function. I defined here, and inside this function I defined another function, which is its name is create points, which is this function is referred from the previous exercise, and I use this function to produce the location of the enemies, which is in this game is insects. And I use the rand function, which the professor explained as a help, and I define another function to random color, which it does produce a random color, but it's not usable in this function in this game because I used images, but it's also inside this function, which is related to previous exercise. And I used a class to produce or construct objects, and so on. And I use a recursive function to define array of objects, which has a pattern in the class, which is defined. And in this blog I used I defined player specifications or properties, which is x is 60 and y is canvas height. It is exactly is the position of the honey, and the destination is the position of the bee in this game, and so on. And in this blog I explained some commands to perform the pushing key when the key is pressed. What happened? And in this game, in this command used to control the position of the honey. As you can see, its step is 10, And in this block, assigning enemies and flowers properties, I recalled the create points function, which is referred to previous exercise and are inside this game code also, to produce the enemy's position and flower rain positions. And we had seen before when I played the game. And I used several render function. This render function is render if paused, the situation is paused, pause the game. This render function is render if game over happened. And this is a render when the win happened. And this is the main render function. And so on. And I used some updates function, which is the first one is update if win, and the second one is the general update function. This update if win function used to animate a rain of flowers, and the second one is the main one is for produce main animation, which is the game. And update helper controlling of enemies. In this block, I use these functions. These are recursive function to control. No, excuse me, it's not recursive. To control. Yes, to control the situation which happens to the enemies by hitting the wall, the horizontal and vertical walls. And I try to define a collision function, but it doesn't work properly, and I decided to omit or inactive this function. And in this part, controlling a status of game is for controlling what happened to game, the winning or the losing, and what happened to game. And for example, this function is a status check, and it's try to with this variable, excuse me, and this variable, by definition, these variables, I try to understand. Whether the player, which is the honey, did hit to the insects or not. And if heated, I try to move the insect to the outside of the canvas to avoid counting again and again, to avoiding of arising a problem. And these are recursive functions. I use several functions. For example, winner helper used to control the situation, which is the heating of the honey to the bee, and if this happens, the user or the gamer will win, and this control this, and so on. Animator function, and this is a win animator function, which it produce an animation after winning or after hitting the honey to the bee. Only this animation in this situation will work. And I defined a maximum frame 1000 to avoid to infinite animation, and in other words, I timed the animation. This is the main animation function, and it works render, update data, and status check, three main functions. But all these main functions will work when live and opposite of pause and opposite of win status will happen. And the other situations will categorize in the next if statement, in this if statements, as you can see. For example, if paused happen, render if paused will work, and if opposite of live and opposite of pause and opposite of win status happened, render if game over will work, and so on. And this line I called animator function, and I used again event listeners function to jump to the next level by enter key, definition of enter key, and I used this event listener function to renew the game if game over happened. And for fun, I use this extra code, extra animation, which is built in jQuery library. And that's all. Thank you so much.